Good morning, everybody. My name is Stephen Orelowitz. I am Senior Director at Visa, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about smart cities and Visa's understanding of what smart cities means and what we're doing to focus and be active in that area. So when I told my wife I was coming to talk to a room full of about 300 people about smart cities, her eyes kind of glazed over, but I know that we all know that this is the single most exciting thing that's happening and the best use of technology. So I'm going to show you a really interesting disclaimer, which I'm sure you've all read in great detail, and then I'll launch straight into an introductory video. Okay, so the key message there is obviously innovation. So if you asked anybody 5, maybe 4, even 3 years ago who Visa was, they would tell you that we are a card company and we process transactions, which is true. But Visa has moved on beyond that, pretty much like our society, our world has moved on beyond that. We are now much more focused on innovation. We recognize the world is changing. We want to change with it. We have great capabilities to use our current technological base and developments to advance what we're doing, and particularly in the strategic pillar for Visa is smart cities, and specifically within that transit that I'm going to talk about in a second, and also mobility as a service. So Visa commissioned a study of 100 cities across the globe to understand where they are on a scale of digitalization. And we ranked them from, as you can see, cash-centric on the left there, through to digitally maturing in the middle, and the digital leaders on the right-hand side. And no real surprises, as you can probably expect. The more cash-centric countries were typically Africa, some of South America, and even actually some of the Asia-Pacific areas. Digitally maturing, some of the North American areas, some European, and again, some Asia-Pacific. And then the digital leaders is far more about North America, Canada, the UK, where I'm from, Europe, particularly North Europe, and the Nordics and Scandinavia, where we are today. And if we plot those on this map, which you can't really see, this is a heat map of that distribution. And you can see that we have some really digital leaders as far afield as Australia. And then it's clustered in the north there with the Nordic, Scandinavia, and Northern Europe. The underlying point there is that, by and large, our society is still a cash-based society. And there's a fantastic opportunity here to migrate to a digitalized society, not just from an economic benefit, but also from an economic perspective. And if we look at the impact, the potential benefit of moving to a digitalized society, these are some of the figures that you can see. So the total net benefit to those 100 cities, if they were to migrate to a digitalized society, would be $470 trillion. If you look at the total additional economic activity that would bring, it's also stunningly high, $12 trillion. So there's a real economic imperative for cities to move to a digitalized base, because of course, that money that you're generating, you can also reinvest in further improving the society and the cities where we live. How does that reflect on the Scandinavian Nordics area? Well, look what it tells us about Helsinki. So were Helsinki to move to a completely digital, cashless society, the net benefit would be about $2.8 billion, and that's $0.2 billion to consumers, $6.6 billion to government, and a net of $2 billion to business. So there's a real economic benefit here. And the same is true of Stockholm, $5.6 billion, and also for Oslo, $4 billion. So we see that underpinning this concept of smart city and digitalization is there is real and absolute economic benefit for all of us, for consumers, for business, and for government. So I spend most of my time working with transport operators across Europe and, in fact, globally, and we know that on average, a transport operator spends about 14.5 euro cents on every euro that they collect when they use cash or paper ticketing. When they migrate across to a digitalized form of ticketing, that drops to 4.2 cents. Okay, so if we look at Transport for London, who were the first to move across to bank cards as a way of ticketing, their figures were very, very similar. Their cost of ticketing was about 14.5%. That's moved down now to 9%, and they predict they can bring that even further down to about 6%. And of course, that saving can then be reinvested back into the infrastructure to provide better service for their own consumers and passengers. So as a society, our requirements are changing. We expect everything to be instant. We expect instant payments to be available. We want one-stop shopping as a service. We want automation. We all want automation. One of the earlier talks was about apps, and we see it everywhere in our own lives. Automation is the trendy flavor of the month. And we want digitalization to be smart. We want it to be personal and to be us. And I'm going to tell you an absolutely true story, which, forgive me, some of you may have heard it, but it absolutely solidifies for me what smart cities is all about. It's actually a personal story. It's about my son, David. David's just finished university. He studied computer science at the University of Sussex, which is on the south coast of England. And when he was in his first year of university, he would come back once every 3 or 4 weeks for some clean clothes, some hot food, and some love from his mother. And when he came back the first time, he said to me, "Dad, I could not use my bank card on the London Metro." And I said to him, "Why not?" His answer was because the card that his bank gave him was not contactless. And as I'm sure you know, in London, it's all about contactless. So I said, "Okay, how did you get home?" And his response was, "I paid cash." So me being a father, I thought, okay, he got home safely. That's the end of the story. And personally, I didn't think anything more about it. But he did. So about 4 weeks later, he came home again for more hot food, clean clothes, and love from his mother. And he said to me happily, "Dad, I used my bank card on the metro in London." And I said to him, "Well, how did you do that? Because you told me you didn't have a contactless card." And listen to his response. He said to me, "I changed bank." He didn't even think to phone up his existing bank and say, hey guys, could I please have a contactless card?" He just changed bank. And what struck me when he told me that was, so he's a millennial, or almost a millennial. He's the new generation. He's grown up with technology. He expects technology to be a facilitator, to be a service. It's not sexy like, for old guys like myself, where if you could do something with technology, it's kind of fun. For the younger generation, it's a service. It's just a means to an end. And I think all of us have both the obligation and the possibility to use technology to make our cities much smarter, for the likes of my son and others, of course. So what's Visa doing about all of that? So a few years ago, contactless card payment was kind of new, kind of sexy, and nice to have. That's not the case anymore. If you look at some of these figures, so we have over 3.5 million contactless-enabled terminals across Europe. We have 15 billion contactless payments in the last financial year to September 2018. And of the face-to-face, that's not the internet, it's when I'm in a shop paying with my card, of the face-to-face payments, over half, almost 60%, were made with a contactless card. Now that means that contactless is here to stay. And why is it so popular? Well, that's kind of easy, because it removes friction. You don't have to put your card in, you don't have to put your PIN in. It's just so much easier, so much quicker. And that's what smart cities is all about. It's about making the life of the consumer easier, simpler, and removing the friction. So what is Visa doing specifically? Because if you think about it, we've spoken, and it's been mentioned a few times today, that this concept of smart cities is really attractive, but what actually does that mean? How do we take that idea that we can all kind of grasp? We know it's out there, but how do we take it and make it into something really practical and that we can use? So this is what Visa is doing to try and focus on a very specific area to make sure that we launch something in smart cities and take advantage of the technology. So we know that if we can use smart technology in mass transit, and if we can increase the if we can improve the consumer's experience, then we can help that drive towards cleaner, greener, smarter cities. If we can make our public transport services more accessible, easier to use, then we can start getting people out of their cars and into public transport. And that will help to make our cities cleaner, move faster, and greener. But to do that, we need to be able to offer a fair and easily accessible service. So I'll tell you another story, again, based on my personal experience. I was coming back from a meeting with a transport operator in Brussels about 18 months ago. They are migrating to contactless. And my colleague dropped me at the metro station so I could take the metro back to Eurostar and Eurostar back to London. So it was 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It was dark outside. It was raining. It was the beginning of the rush hour. And lots of people, including myself, were descending the steps into the metro to make their way home or wherever they're going. So I go down the steps, and at the bottom in front of me is this big grey box. So I realized this is probably the ticketing machine. And I can make out there's some labeling on it, but of course, without my glasses, I can't see, so I have to fumble to put my glasses on. And then I can see that there's options in Flemish and in French. So I'm okay in English, but neither of those languages are particularly my strong point. And I'm fumbling around looking, is there a button that I can translate this to English? Eventually I find it. And then I have to work out, well, which ticket do I buy and which way am I going and which is the cheapest option and how do I do it? And only once I've done all of that can I look around in my pocket to see if I have the right money to pay for it. And it struck me how much simpler would life be for me and for all the consumers if we could just take this big, ugly, grey box, move it far away where nobody has to see it, just walk down to the metro, tap my card and travel. And that's what being a smart city is all about. It's about improving the life of the people who live in it, removing friction, making things flow better for them. As I mentioned before, digitalization also brings with it fantastic economic benefits. And when I talk to transport operators and they tell me that they want to move to a contactless, a digitalized open loop service, I ask them why, what's your motivator? And they almost always give me three responses. The first is, it drives down our operating costs. It's just much cheaper for us, and we can reinvest that in improving our service. The second reason they give me is that it improves their operational efficiency. If you can speed up the massive people going down into that metro that I was doing, or speed up the boarding time on the bus, because as you know, the longer the bus is sitting at the station, the less productive it's being. You want the bus to be moving all the time. And moving to a digitalized way of ticketing shortens that. And the third one is they can improve the service to the consumer. And most public transport operators have a requirement and obligation to provide a good service to their consumers. And this is one of the ways they can do it. So this is a quotation from Shashi Verma, who's the Chief Technology Officer for Transport for London. Transport for London, as you know, were the first organization to move to contactless payments. And he said something very simple. He said, we came to the very simple realization that nobody wants to buy a ticket, and actually, we don't want to sell them one either. So if you think about it, when I go into my local supermarket to buy my bread and my milk, I don't buy a ticket so that I can buy my bread and my milk. I just buy my bread and my milk. So why should it be any different on public transport? Why should I buy a ticket so that I can travel? The answer actually goes way back to Victorian times when in London they invented the trams or the trolley bus, and the companies were not confident that the ticket collector would put the money in the correct pocket, so they issued a token to avoid that fraud. But the world has moved on. I mean, I don't know if you saw about 4 months ago, a completely cashless supermarket opened in the US. You don't pay. You just take stuff off the shelf, and it's all registered as you take it off the shelf and debit it to you later. I went shopping on the weekend with my wife. We entered the supermarket. I picked up a scanner. Every time she took a product off the shelf, I scanned it, put it in the trolley in our bag. She had fun because she spent hours shopping and I spent hours zapping, which was really cool. At the end, we got to the exit. I stuck in my card and paid. Didn't have to queue, didn't have to interact with a cashier or anything. That's the kind of society we're moving to. So why should transport be any different? Why should we not take advantage of that and use this technology to make our cities smarter? So what has Visa done about it? So Visa has developed what we call the mass transit transaction model. So this is a framework and a model for implementing digitalization in mass transit. And I'm sure you've all heard of the experience in London and other cities now where you just tap with your card and go. So this model is basically that, and it's full of great features. It's a model which is great for complex multimodal systems. So you can tap your card on the metro. You can then use the same payment to go on the tram above ground. You can use it for zoning and for timing. It's excellent for operations which have high throughput of consumers. So I don't know if any of you have ever been to London at 8 o'clock on a Monday morning, but it's not a great experience. And if you don't have a mechanism which will get passengers through the gates as quickly as possible, you're going to have a problem. And this is exactly what this mass transit transaction does. It's incredibly versatile. It's great for complex multimodal operations, but it's also good for medium-sized or small operations. And the point here is what we're doing is two things. From one aspect, from the transport operator's aspect, we're digitalizing their ticketing, okay? So it's all those benefits that I spoke about before. And from the consumer's perspective, we're actually taking a step towards a smart city. We're doing something to take away the friction from the consumer's perspective. No more queuing, no more buying a ticket, no more thinking about which one, just tap and ride. So this is actually a map, although you can't see the countries, which is a bit interesting. But anyway, this is just these are some of the projects that we have going on globally where transport operators are migrating to a digitalized ticketing solution. So as far away as Sydney in Australia, I was out there last year helping them go live. Singapore as well. We have a project which is about to go live in Johannesburg, South Africa. Rio will launch in South America, in Brazil, in a couple of months. I was in New York 3 weeks ago helping the New York Transport Authority. They will go live with contactless payments in May of 2019. And of course, we have projects all over Europe. Czech Republic is live. Dijon in France went live in March of this year. Milan went live in June of this year, and the story goes on and on. And these are all transport operators who are doing something concrete to take advantage of digitalization. It's a first step to making their cities smart. And of course, closer to home, so we have Helsinki, which is well on the way to moving towards a digitalized ticketing system. Turku is developing a project to do the same thing. In Sweden, we have Malmö and Scantrafiken for the southern area of Sweden, who are hopefully going live in May of next year, and of course, Stockholm as well. So these are not by coincidence, these are all digital leaders that we spoke about before, and they're taking advantage of technology to help make their cities just that little bit smarter. So Visa was very, very closely involved in the Transport for London launch. As you saw on the map, we are also involved in many other projects globally. And what we've tried to do is to develop a standardized approach to implementing digitalization in mass transit. And the reason for this is quite simple. London went through lots of pain to get up and running. In the end, it was worth it because it was and continues to be incredibly successful. But there's no need for every city to go through the same pain. It should really be as simple as deploying any other technology. So to do that, Visa has adopted a global approach. We have a global model. So the model that you saw that will be used that's being used in Sydney or Singapore or South Africa is the same one that will be used in Helsinki or Malmö or Turku. And it can, as I said, it can scale up or down. And the idea there is that we want the vendors who are working in this space to have a standard blueprint to work against, because that makes it much easier and quicker for them to get to market and for cities to adopt this technology and take that step towards becoming a smart city. So we have our global model and framework. We have Visa Ready for Transit. So this is the opportunity for vendors to go through a certification process with Visa, and that's hardware or software specific for mass transit, so that when the likes of a transport operator are looking around to see who they can work with as they migrate to a digital ticketing solution, they can go on the Visa website and see, yes, this company's been certified by Visa, so is this one, I can work comfortably with them. And again, the intent there is just to make the whole process easier and smoother so that more cities can take the step in digitalizing their payments. We also have a very standardized way of working with transport operators and vendors. What Visa does not do is we're not happy to watch a project develop and then take a marketing sticker and stick it on the project at the end and say, hey, we were here. We absolutely work really closely with all the key stakeholders, and that can be city councils, transport operators, vendors, to ensure that when a project launches, it's at least as good as London and even better. London was and continues to be the benchmark, but we want to improve on that as the world moves on. So I think the point there that I'm making is that Visa is incredibly committed to digitalization and taking a practical step forward in developing smart cities. So I'm going to show you here a short video which relates to some of the work we've been doing.
The fact that people are switching to contactless is a testament to the fact that people find it easy to use.
We've already reached 13% of our on-bus sales being made by contactless.
Contactless payment is fast and efficient, and customers like it very much because it's so easy.
A number of things have been invented that don't need to be invented again. For any city that's wanting to adopt contactless now, the whole infrastructure that's been created out of the back of London is available to be used worldwide.
Contactless give their customers flexibility, but also hopefully drive patronage and increase revenue for the business. We saw this as a real opportunity to ensure that customers didn't have more complexity, and actually just leveraging the contactless environment available in the street today was something that we felt was very important.
The customers we serve obviously come from all around the world, and when they arrive in Edinburgh, there's an uncertainty about how you pay, what ticket to buy. Having the contactless option available on Airlink makes both the driver and the customer's experience far simpler.
One of our top priorities is to give the best customer service. At the end of 2018, we are going to have the whole fleet with the contactless readers to make possible the open loop payment.
Contactless is unique because you can auto-cap, and through the system, passengers give always the best price. If you tap more times per day, you pay only 1 day ticket.
When we realized that we could not only leverage the existence of contactless cards that over 90% of Poles already have, but that the customer-facing devices that we could engineer are much smaller and lighter, we knew we had to dive in.
Visa offered a lot of assistance within the risk management area. We also recognised that Visa have the biggest majority of cards in the UK, and obviously that brings a lot of experience, and we knew that we could rely on them to assist us and to reach out to them whenever we needed support.
Visa experts helped us with implementation, and through this, our project went very smoothly.
I can honestly say I've been delighted in the way the process has gone and the assistance and experience that we've had in working together with Visa. We believe contactless travel and the opportunities it brings will move the transport sector into the modern age and beyond.
So digitalizing tickets in mass transit is one practical step that Visa has taken to take that concept of smart cities and make it very specific and actually do it. But that's really just the beginning. So as I said to you right at the top of this presentation, Visa is absolutely strategically committed to smart cities and to mobility as a service. And as you see, we're proactively working in that space. Currently, our offering is around mass transit because that's so popular and it's such a practical manifestation of smart cities. But these are just some of the other things that we can achieve together and we can do to make our cities smarter as we go through that digitalization process. The mass transit transaction model that I spoke about is really just a platform. And once transit operators move to this platform, they can then incorporate these other services seamlessly into that platform. So, for example, tolls. It's a really popular topic in mass transit. Why can't we digitalize tolls? What about bikes? Most cities now, as part of the cleaner, greener, smarter cities, have bike services that can fold into this easily, as can parking and potentially car share as well. So it's really the first step that we've taken in making a much wider encroachment into mass transit and into smart cities and, as I said, mobility as a service. So I'm going to finish with this slide, which is probably actually the single most important slide in the whole presentation. So this is something that Jim Hackett, who's the president and CEO of Ford Motor Company, he said, it's not about the city getting smarter, but it's about the humans having a better day. Now, there's something really, really important and deep in that statement. Because all of us collectively, with our technology and our ideas, we can go ahead and we can build this glass tower that's all shiny, but basically doesn't serve too much of a purpose and stays empty. We need to take the opposite approach. We need to make sure that every single thing we do in our move towards smart cities is focused around the consumer. If you get the consumer experience right, put the consumer front and center of everything you're doing, then everything else around that will fall into place. And I think that's something we absolutely need to keep in mind. This is about removing friction and making the lives of our citizens in our different cities much easier and much better using technology. And I'm delighted to say that I'm sure you are all delighted. That's my very last slide, and I'm finished. Unfortunately, there's no time for questions, but I will be hanging around, so please feel free to come along and have a chat if there's anything you want to ask or discuss. Thank you very much.